Hi, What the Flick? Tim Frisch, Francis Maxwell, special guest Josh Butler, director extraordinaire.
Thank you
The
very much.
Vampire Diaries, The Magician, Shadowhunters. Bradley Cooper produced the Limitless television show, episodes of that.
Correct,
So
yes.
welcome.
Thank
It's good
you.
to have you here.
Thank you. Great
Yes.
to be here. Thank you for having me.
Today we're going to talk about The Walking Dead mid-season finale, season 7, episode 8, Hearts Still Beating. So this was an episode that sort of tied together all of the plots from this past season. We see where Michonne went. We see quite a bit of Spencer screen time in this episode. We revisit Carol and Morgan back in the kingdom, Aaron and Rick, who are out on their run to the boat, and of course, Carl and the rest of the Alexandrians dealing with Negan, who has shown up unexpectedly to deliver Carl back to their doorstep. So a ton of stuff happens in this episode.
Yes.
Maybe too much stuff, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
I have complained all season about pacing issues with The Walking Dead. How they'll have a really exciting episode and then not revisit that plot for another 3 episodes later with bottle episodes and the slow, methodical Carol and Morgan episode and a Tara episode. Or the Daryl episode was good, but it did get in the way of the larger plot. And I said, The Walking Dead, why can't we do multiple storyline episodes like they do on every other drama that's on television right now? And here in these last 2 episodes, The Walking Dead has said, here you go. Here's all the storylines mashed all together. And I'm like, whoa, I guess that's what I asked for. But as a director, Josh, I want you to tell me what you think of those attempts or successes, failures in terms of the last 2 episodes.
Sure. I think you're right, because I think this sort of falls into the trap that Lost fell into, because when you have ensemble characters and you have so many characters to service every week, as a writer, as a director, you're constantly trying to figure out how to tell this saga of a multi-season TV show. It's not, so the tangents, I think, in some ways are kind of like filling out time because they want the show to last for 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 seasons, so you end up with that. And Lost made that choice, and I think a lot of viewers turned off on Lost in that sort of middle season where it was really all about individual character storylines and just going off and going, oh, we had this person, and this flashback and that backstory. So, I mean, it seems like this season there's been a little bit of that. To me, it seems like there's a little bit of treading water. Not to say it's not entertaining, but it just sort of feels like, there's just not enough kind of storyline to sort of have an ensemble piece every week.
Yeah, I agree with both points. I understand these episodes. Like, you have to find a way to draw it out, the storyline that they set so firmly in the first episode. It's Negan's world we're living in, and there has to be some sort of revolt to try and take back what Rick and everyone has fought for. So I get whether the other episodes had to come into it. It wasn't the pacing of those episodes, it was the placement of them. Like, I didn't think you needed to have a full episode focused on Morgan and Carol and the Kingdom, because then once you put that episode in place, we never touched on it again. The last thing we've seen of the Kingdom was this episode, where Carol's now living in her own little environment, and people keep coming in and intruding on her. So whereas for me, the viewer, where is the need to get the Kingdom involved? Like, we have one of the characters who clearly has an agenda against the Saviors, and rightfully so. He is making the claim that they need to go in, basically go to war and fight against him. But what have we seen from the viewers to say that, all right, the Kingdom really needs to put up a stance against the Saviors? We never really retouched on it. From all we know, this is what he has stated, and it's his agenda. But the Kingdom itself, despite a couple of altercations they had with the Saviors, what I felt they could have done is they could have continuously told that storyline in amongst, like, the Terra episode or in amongst the Daryl episode. Go back, touch on it a little bit. You don't have to focus everything either on one or everyone. You can have a couple episodes where there's a couple of storylines running at the same time. The Kingdom, I felt, was just there because we now need more numbers to go and fight the Saviors. Other than that.
Yeah, and it seems like for this first half of a season, they had exactly 1 episode and 1 scene with those characters that they wanted to do. So they did that episode as the number 2, and then they held that 1 scene till episode 8.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, right.
So that, it's just putting the pieces on the chessboard. It's like, okay, we need to get the Kingdom in play, we need to get the Hilltop in play, we need to learn about the Saviors, and we'll spread these out as best we can. And we disagree with some choices, but we see it all come together in this episode.
Yeah.
Right, and then when you see the promo for the second half of the season, it is all about the kingdom
Yeah,
and
and
Ezekiel and going and
how they're gonna
finding to
change.
improving the numbers and going into fighting. So clearly they wanted that storyline to be the second half
Yeah.
of season 7. And again, when you block out these seasons in a writer's room, these are the types of decisions that are made, the standalone episodes, the episodes with these singular storylines, and then when everybody comes back together, obviously in the last 2 weeks, and then where the season's going. So again, I mean, my theory, right or wrong, is that there's a sense of like treading water, especially in a show that wants to keep going long after maybe the storylines would necessarily keep them going.
Yes.
Now, before we started, you were talking to me about some of the director crew choices in this season, and that this episode in particular was directed by, refresh me.
Michael Satrazimis, who basically started as a camera operator on the show and then became director of photography and then started directing episodes, I think in season 4, or no, actually end of season 5, I think. But certainly has been directing the last couple seasons and is kind of taken over, I think, as de facto producing director on the show. So, it's like a lot of, I think the editors have directed the shows, assistant directors have directed the shows. There's a lot of internal promotion among the crew, which is great,
But you were also saying that sometimes it's best to have some fresh
Well,
blood.
the job that I do when I'm brought into a series, I think a lot of times I'm expected to bring a fresh take on an existing show, so it doesn't necessarily become stale. I think that's the argument for episodic television directors rotating from show to show, is that I, as a filmmaker, will come into an existing show and not necessarily reinvent the wheel. Obviously, I need to make it look and feel like a show that you're going to watch every week, and you're not going to say, oh, what did this person do to sort of, try to make my show into something it's not. But under the sort of guidelines of what the show has established, you can do a lot of cool stuff and a lot of filmmaking that is exciting and new. And I just wonder if maybe a few outside directors wouldn't invigorate a season 7 of this show, for example.
Is there a good way that you've found, or maybe a bad way, that a show will keep cohesion through multiple directors over the course of a season, but at the same time allow each director to do what they were brought on to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think each show deals with that differently. Like a show, I've just directed my 3rd episode of a show mentioned earlier, The Magicians, for Sci-Fi Channel. And that has been just an absolute pleasure working with the showrunners and the producers and the writers there, because they solicit the individual filmmakers for each episode, and they treat me like a filmmaker that is taking this on and making basically a 42-minute movie. And they allow for me to bring in a lot of ideas and make the show look and feel like the show has been established, but also then to bring my own touches to it. So some shows are a little more programmatic, if you will, but I in a sort of a good way, I never actually get hired for those shows. Like I don't get the Chicago Fires and the the CSI, whatever spinoff is latest, or NCIS, or any, because those shows are very much like they have a style, and everybody comes to the show, and then they're taught, as a director, you're taught, okay, this is the lens you use here, this is how you cover this scene in the police station or the courtroom. There's a very, very much like kind of a regimented style. So I like shows where they give you more freedom, obviously. So. Seems like The Walking Dead, there's freedom, but there's also, I think, a sense that they want to really keep the style and the mood that Frank Darabont and the DP David Tattersall really set, I think, in the pilot, that sort of slow, kind of not cutty, very quiet, which is hard to do because you err on the side of boring,
Yeah, right.
So,
and I think that's such a valid point, but something that I think is almost revigorated that form of filmmaking this season is, specifically with Negan, like there's a lot of these shots with him that you expect to cut away to another scene, but they just stay on him because he has you on the edge of your seat no matter what. Like you never know when his mood's going to change. And I think, if I might be right or wrong, but that goes in tune with how they stay focused on him for a long period of time on the shots, even when he's not saying words, even when he's not really acting, he's just responding, and it's so captivating for me because he is the draw of this season. He is the continuous draw. He's petrifying. Each episode, he finds new ways to just bully everyone around him. And I think that goes in tune with how even if like Spencer's in the scene, you're not listening to Spencer. Like you're just listening to what Negan has to say. And I think one of the points I was going to make early on is no one should make plans in The Walking Dead. Because as soon as you make plans, you're dead. Like he says to Rosita, maybe we could catch a drink later. I don't think so, buddy. It was clear that you were going down. Clear.
So I'll use that brief segue. Let's talk about some things we thought worked in this episode or that we really liked, because I think this episode did have a lot of successes.
Yes, it did.
In terms of making me excited for the second half of the season, because there were a lot of episodes this season that were like, ugh, what are we doing, guys?
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought this episode did things well. I think one of the storylines that I really enjoyed was Spencer's. He got a lot of screen time. We really saw some character development, which is always a bad sign on The Walking Dead when you get some character development.
Yeah, it's usually a foreboding, yes.
Yeah, I think the way that he dealt with Negan was true to character, but at the same time showed growth, showed a trajectory, that he had a plan, that he wanted to do something.
Yeah.
I thought the most, I don't remember his storyline with Rosita. Maybe it was a long time.
It was a brief. It was like it was summed up in her words.
Ships
You were
passing
cute.
in the night.
You were
Yeah,
tall.
yeah.
Like
One
Abraham was like that's what it was.
I liked that scene.
Yeah.
I thought it showed real chemistry.
I think
Yeah, it
I
was
think
good.
that both of them had clear growth in this episode. I think that Rosita, for the first time, I think we've seen her a little bit more evolve as an actor. Like the moment where she basically is just talking to the priest. I thought that was a
was a
great
really
I thought
scene.
that was the standout.
Yeah,
scene
that was
of
the
the
standout
episode.
scene where
Excellent
she's tearing up because I don't think she knows what her purpose is, and clearly she doesn't if she can't shoot a guy from 6 foot away. But either way, we know Negan was never going to die in this episode, so we knew something was going to happen. But Spencer, he clearly didn't understand Negan. He thought he understood Negan, but us as viewers have seen him spare Carl because Carl's a badass and mows down some of his men right in front of him. We've seen him almost have this kind of tainted view on Rick because Rick has fallen to his feet. So I think that what Spencer thought is, I'm going to go in and charm this guy. I'm going to prove that I am, in a way, loyal to my community whilst being disloyal to someone who's been a leader already. And what Negan in that moment thought for me is that he's already broken Rick. He now would have to break another individual, so what's the easiest option? Done.
He doesn't
and I
like
don't have to deal
plans
with
that
you.
aren't his plans.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So I think it was telling that as soon as Spencer started to grow, he was going down. And I actually watched some of the after conversations on Talking Dead, and it was funny listening to the actor in a way that he didn't like being that character. Like he knew that it was coming across as a douchey character. But in every story arc, you need someone to push the envelope as to the other side. Like we talked about it last week. Tim and I were saying we understand why he is this way. He's lost his mum, he's lost his dad, and he's lost his brother. Regardless of whether that would have happened 5, 6, 7 years or it happened at the moment, Rick, in a way, was directly responsible for that.
yeah.
So it's understandable why he would take these actions, but he just didn't understand the type of villain he was coming up against. Someone, as you mentioned rightfully so, he doesn't like anything happening that isn't either a result of him or his word first. And that's the type of villain we've got here, who's, for me, the most petrifying I think we've seen in the whole episodes. Yeah.
Oh, agreed. Yeah.
Any standout moments for you, John?
Well, I mean, and along those lines, to state the obvious, the scene with Negan and Spencer,
Yeah.
the pool table in the street. I mean,
that was the most unbelievable part for me. That they were able to properly balance a pool table in the middle of the street. You know how long
so
that
funny,
takes?
yeah.
It's hours. You need
so
crews
true.
of people.
It's a very,
Yeah.
it's a hard thing.
But we'll give him a little bit of poetic license,
Sure,
I suppose.
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
because there was that great shot after everyone left, and you had Rick standing in the street with the pool table and all the blood coming out of Spencer. I mean, that was my favorite shot. in the
Because once
episode, yeah.
Spencer had dropped to the ground, we didn't see him.
We didn't see
again.
him I know.
We
that
didn't
was-
see him suffer or die. It was like holding on.
And
to
I
him
had
forever.
two thoughts about that, because knowing how that works on set, you genuinely don't want to take an actor and have them on the ground, just dead in a scene, because it's really not fair to them, especially if they're covered in blood. So you try to cover around them, so you don't require them in the shot every scene.
But I thought it made it more impactful.
But in this, so then that was what I was thinking up until I saw that shot, and then I was like, oh well, that was cool, because then that was the way to reveal it. And because he was when Negan was kind of referencing everybody with, I guess, poor Lucille, who got shot.
Oh yeah, who got shot.
Right.
His treatment of that bat is phenomenal. It's just
really
amazing
good.
character.
It's really
the way
good,
that he, everything revolves around her the way it should revolve around him. Like he treats her the way he wants everyone to treat him in a way. Like this symbol that you cannot get on the wrong side of, or you cannot try to taint their appearance or any way. So. I think that scene was so funny, just the way he wasn't upset as much of her trying to kill him, but what you did to Lucille is more so what outraged him. But I wanted to ask you guys, So Rosita, we talked about how she had a little bit more of a character development. I think her acting chops, she got to express them a little bit more so. But did you not feel like there had to be a scene where she felt the consequence of what she caused? Like, I just feel like Daryl's complete dismay, like of him being in this environment, having to just consistently go over in his head, I, in a way, caused the deaths of some of the people that were involved. Rosita caused the death. It might not have been as a monumental character. Sorry, I'm forgetting her name, but she got killed right next to Carl.
Olivia,
as a result of that. I felt they just needed a moment to show that she looked as if she was upset when they took Eugene away. But again, this is the rash actions that cause these deaths that have to be thought out more so. And Rosita was a direct result of that.
I'm sure we'll get that in episode 9 to an extent. Maybe not Olivia. She really seems more broken up about Eugene being found out because she made him do it. That's on her.
Right.
So.
Right.
No. So what was your take on the final moments, walking into the Hilltop and the group uniting? I mean, I am a sucker for a nice moving scene. I think that it wasn't just that Rick and Daryl hugged it out. The acting of Daryl, right? So I don't necessarily think he's a phenomenal actor, like mind-blowing, but it's his just discreet way of acting in scenes that catches me like off guard. Like, he looked like a 7 to 8 year old boy who was just reunited with people that he'd like missed for a while. So broken, so vulnerable, barely even looking at Rick in the eye. I thought that scene was great. Just from that moment. I mean, I get it. They're all now, we're ready to fight. It's supposed to inspire some sense of hope at the end, but that scene was a standout for me. I think just seeing Daryl that vulnerable at that moment.
And Rick getting back his gun, I guess.
Yeah, Rick
that
getting his gun back.
A good moment,
Yeah.
And shot well. And yeah, I mean, then there's a lot of that kind of traditional wrap up to an episode that you don't necessarily get in TV a lot, which is that sort of sense of, oh, everything's coming to an emotional conclusion. But yeah, I agree. I think it was emotional, the reunion, even though I think Norman Reedus always has too much hair in his face, so I can't really see him acting. But otherwise, it was good.
I agree. Were you sold on it, Tim? No tissues?
I mean, I didn't cry.
Well, that's fine. Just me then.
I actually found more a more interesting subplot was the silent nodding between Rosita and Sasha when they meet at the end.
That was interesting.
And realized that although they hated each other for so long and were so broken up about the death of Abraham individually, that now they've both grown as people to be able to accept each other again, knowing that they all have to be in this together.
Yeah.
I mean, Father Gabriel said as much. We have to be in this together. Only we can do it.
Yeah. So again, but with that scene, we have the group starting to reunite. Do we see do you think as we go into the second half of the season, we're going to see, as you mentioned with the teasers, there's going to be more of a look into the kingdom? Because as a viewer, I need to know that they are bought into this fight. Like, the way that we now know that Rick's group have been pushed to the limit. Like, Rick has seen things done to everyone that's close to him. We see people just completely broken beyond their means. So, but for the kingdom to get involved in this fight, do you think that's what's going to be the majority of the second half of the season, is them basically making their claim as why this fight is as important to them as it is to Rick and the Hilltop? Because the Hilltop's obviously are going to be involved. Jesus is involved. Maggie's going to be, I assume, the leader of that Hilltop, the way she's acting and getting things. She gets the apple thrown to her.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I'm hanging on it so much, but I need to know that the kingdom is as much involved in this.
I think the kingdom is an on-off switch. I think that the real struggle is going to be between that soldier, I think his name is Richard, that comes to approach Carol and Morgan. Yeah. Between those three, them figuring out what their philosophy is, what they want to do in this world, and why they want to do it. We get that little scene of Richard going back to, assumedly, his trailer where he and his family lived, breaking down in tears.
Which was kind of a surprising scene.
Right?
Because you wouldn't necessarily feel like, from a POV perspective, which maybe just too kind of intellectual a term to apply to these things, but as a director, usually, or writer, you're trying to figure out like whose POV is the story, and I never would have expected that Richard would have had a private moment that we're allowed to see outside the context of the other characters.
Right.
That was what was a little jarring to me.
I guess it's setting up that he's going to be a player
maybe
in the next half season.
Yeah.
Or that hideaway was actually like meaningful in some way, or that, you know.
Yeah, we can
So
see that.
that's one of three things that I didn't think really took hold in this episode. The other two being Daryl is escaping. I guess now we are led to believe that it was Jesus who slipped the key under the door.
Yeah.
Although it's not said in any respect.
No,
but then he
showed up.
yeah, right.
Hey, there he was. Oh,
So
hey.
so Daryl breaks into a room and changes his clothes, finds some food. That all makes sense. But then he has this long, lingering stare with chess pieces on a chessboard. And then after he's done thinking and eating the peanut butter and he's ready to escape, he flips the chessboard and leaves.
Discreetly.
And I was like, did I forget something? Like, does he recognize that chessboard from somewhere? Does that mean anything? It doesn't, right?
You know, unless it's some kind of a metaphor for like the entire, world of the series. I don't know.
Maybe
Is he
they're
playing
pawns.
chess? I don't know.
They're pawns in Negan's game.
It's a bit of an obvious metaphor. I don't know, but I agree. I didn't understand.
And I also didn't fully understand Michonne's scenes. So she sets a trap. She successfully catches a woman out on her own from the sanctuary, convinces this woman with force and a gun to drive her to the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And then all she does is talk to herself the whole time.
Right.
And then when they get there, the woman tells her how best to kill her and destroy the car. So that was her spiritual journey. That was her figuring out what she needed to do.
Yeah. And I didn't even
what did I
realize that
miss?
she killed her until the very end, where watching The Talking Dead, they do the in memoriam or whatever.
Yeah, because they popped to that very wide shot, and I guess using there must have been a silencer or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I
it
had
was like,
headphones on, so I heard the
oh,
little...
you heard the...
Yeah, and by the way, like, if you notice, I don't know if I'm looking too, it's because there's a director on this show. I think I'm trying to look into all these minor details, but we haven't seen close up the death, like the killing of a savior since Negan's kind of took over. Like, we see Daryl smash Fat Joey, but we don't see it actually happen. And then we see Michonne involved with that scene, but we don't see her kill her, whereas the brutality of the saviors is in front of everyone's eyes. Like, every death that they've carried out have been right in front. I think it's just a way to show that how intimidating they are.
Do you think Daryl's brutality makes sense in the context of what he's been through?
Maybe. I mean,
It seemed out of character for me. But maybe they were really like last-ditch effort to drive home how bad it's been for him. Because we hadn't seen that since 5 episodes ago. When he's being tortured.
Yeah, and that sort of odd line about it's not about getting by or it's about getting it all. Or something.
Yeah.
It's like
it wasn't fitting. The last thing I think about it wasn't fitting with his plan. He was trying to get out discreetly. Like, if you're gonna maul someone in the middle of this yard, you assume that people are gonna hear it. Whereas if it was there, if he was to take care of it, you'd imagine he would try to kill him quietly and then move on. But it seemed like he was wanting to make a statement to himself. This was kind of like, this is a lash back at you guys. Like, you've broken me down. I'm sure that's what we're going to see in the next few episodes, is Daryl didn't look himself even when he was hugging Rick. He's going to need some sort of rehab, I think, to get back to where he was.
Yeah, it just seems like he snapped there. Definitely,
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, an eventful, full 90-minute episode of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
It's certainly enough to tide me over for a couple of months till we get back into it.
February, right?
February 12th, I think.
Valentine's Day?
You guys have more information than me.
I think it said February 12th on the promo.
All right, I'm ready. Counting down the days.
Well, thank you, special guest.
Thank you
Josh, for
for
joining
having
us
me.
today.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
And we'll see you in a couple months.